Okay, everyone. Good to see you tonight for our exciting second hour. That was a great first hour. I really enjoyed the presentations. And so this evening, we're going to have a word of prayer, and then we'll ask the Lord's blessing. And then Charlie will give his presentation, as you see, of India in the Bible. And so let me ask Sister Maureen out there, who I don't like to call on people I can't see, but Maureen is different. I can call on Maureen, whom I cannot see, because she's usually quite responsive. So Maureen, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing well, Pastor.
There
Thank
you okay, good, good. Okay, so could you lead us out in prayer as we start tonight?
you. Thank you, Heavenly Father, for this day, Lord. We ask that you bless um, all of us here, Lord, with your word, Lord, and that we ask that Charlie and whoever else is doing presentations for tonight will give us a presentation which is according to your word, Lord, and that you give them encouragement and encourage us into reading your scriptures every day, daily, Lord. And I pray that you give Pastor wisdom and teaching the rest of the class, Lord. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Okay, thank you, Maureen. Okay, Charlie, take it away.
Okay, so this evening's presentation is on India in the Bible. It is mentioned twice, both in the book of Esther, once in verse 1 of chapter 1, and then again in chapter 8, verse 9. If you could go there very quickly, you could turn to the next slide. I'll go ahead and read it because the next slide, I think, is just simply the listing of the verse itself. Now it came to pass in the days of Ahasuerus, this Ahasuerus which reigned from India even unto Ethiopia over 127 provinces. And then again in chapter 8, that's what you see reading there. Then the king's scribes called at that time in the third month, that is in the month Sivan, on the 23rd day thereof. And as it was written according to all that Mordecai commanded unto the Jews and to the lieutenants and to the deputies and rulers of the provinces which are from India unto Ethiopia, 127 provinces, unto every province according to the writing thereof, and unto all the people after their language, and to the Jews according to their writing and according to their language. So we see there that it's twice mentioned. It's part of King Ahasuerus' territory, basically, that now he's ruling over as Medo-Persian king. You could go to the next map. It extends basically his rule from the eastern border, which would be India, which was mentioned, all the way back to on the western border into Ethiopia. So basically Africa, East Africa, Northeast Africa, and then all the way. India at that time would have been in the Indus Valley. So what would be modern day Afghanistan and Pakistan, and a bit of Northwest India. India, it wasn't what we would know today as India back then. So India, just as a profile, is territory that comprises 3.3 million square miles. It borders a lot of territory. Actually, it's one of the largest countries in, it's seventh largest as far as territory wise in the world. It's roughly between second to third as far as population wise in the world presently. It goes north into China, bordering Afghanistan, Pakistan, Bhutan, Nepal, Myanmar, Bangladesh, West Bengal, and Sri Lanka, and then a number of different ocean territory. The people, you have not only multiple ethnic groups comprising the Indian people, but also multiple languages. It's actually officially 22 languages that are recognized by the Constitution of India, but Hindi is actually officially the official language. But there's hundreds of actually other languages beyond that that are in use as far as dialects and tribal languages that are not officially recognized. Constitutionally, it is a socialist democratic republic with a parliamentary system of government. It comprises 28 states and 8 union territories. As we know it today, didn't come into effect until 15 August 1947. And then the Constitution came into effect in 26 January 1950. But as what is known as India actually predates that, and it's one of the oldest civilizations that have any kind of writing or extant writing outside of, some people would consider China as well, similar to that, but certainly Israel, because with Israel we have the Bible, and then there's one other country as well that has writings that are kind of, Egypt really is what they would say, that goes as far back, not quite as far back as the Bible, but close enough is time frame from what they're counting as from the Bible. Now, some of this is going to be from a I don't advocate this, but is basically what you find with regard to India. They say that 55,000 years ago, first modern humans or Homo sapiens had arrived on the Indian subcontinent. We know that's not true, but what's consensus is that about 7,000, between 7 to 9,000 is what we have, where you see civilizations start to form around primarily the Ganges, but also the Indus River Valley. And then you have writings that start to take place shortly after that, where they have any kind of history. And a lot of them are what they call Vedic or Vedas. So it's kind of like songs or poetry that's put, like, that records history of what went down or what went on in their civilization. But not only that, beyond that, we have you can go to the next slide.
Okay.
During this point in time in history, as far as 2600 to 1900 BCE, we also have obviously India having civilization concurrent, similarly with like Israel and other Fertile Crescent countries, though we only intersect with them because of Esther in chapter 1 and chapter 8. They still were around as individuals, as a number of other countries probably as well, as far as but we don't have writings that basically kind of concur with them, but they were around during this time, just carrying on as a civilization, and then eventually expanding in territory from the different tribal groups that they were to being overtaken by other individuals that joined other tribes to rule over those tribes, and then basically create it from what it was, just different scattered civilizations, to one big civilization. You can go to the next slide. Okay, our intersection with the Bible. This is probably a little bit hard to read here, but then you have, as far as years from when we have some form of writing that indicates civilization, which most of this is concurrent with when Fertile Crescent civilization was taking place. But our intersection with them is going to be 480 BC, because that is where roughly we meet Xerxes the First, or as he's written in the Bible, Ahasuerus. So now Ahasuerus, he is leader of Medo-Persia Empire. He followed Babylon. He's able to take over Babylon. And then the time frame that we get with regard to him being in charge of where we see in Book of Esther is, though, here's something that I find interesting. A lot of sources that I read say that Ahasuerus, by that name Ahasuerus, isn't found in secular sources, but Xerxes the first is what's most concurred to be Ahasuerus of the Bible, based off of not only how he conducted himself, but also the time frame in which he lived, as being the fourth emperor of the Achaemenid Empire. And then also fits most likely as well the time frame when this was written is thought to be in 480 BC. And this would have been shortly after his defeat at the Battle of Thermopylae, where he fought against Sparta, against 300 Spartans. They ended up overtaking them, but they were defeated at Salamis initially. And then he went home. And then following that, he would have what we read about in Book of Esther, where he has his big party, and then he brings Queen Vashti out to parade her around. She doesn't want to be paraded around, so he says, okay, I want to get rid of you. I'm going to find me a queen. And then we see the transpirings of Book of Esther. Now, why is this? Why am I talking about this? Why is it that what's significant about India or any of that? In particular, really nothing, because really I would think, okay, maybe something in Israel would be a little bit more interesting. But I just found it interesting. Go to the next slide. That you have pretty far-reaching empire that goes as far west as Indus Valley, modern day Northwest Pakistan, and then, or well, not just Northwest Pakistan, but Northwest India, Pakistan, Afghanistan. And then if you were to read towards the bottom, very last verse of Esther, chapter 8, and that is, in the province, or excuse me, in every province and in every city, whithersoever the king's commandment and his decree came, the Jews had joy and gladness, a feast and a good day. And many of the people of the land became Jews, for fear of the Jews fell upon them. All right, so quick summary, Book of Esther, and our intersection here with it. Mordecai was a Jew who was in exile over there in Shusha, the palace area. Mordecai had done a solid, colloquially speaking. In other words, he'd done a good thing in being able to reveal a plot, like an undercover plot by individuals that wanted to overthrow the king, King Xerxes in particular, and they wanted to have him killed. So he revealed it to the king, and then he was not honored in any way or any kind of good done to him because of that. But because Mordecai was a God-fearing Jew, he would not bow to a man by the name of Haman, who also happened to be somebody that had the king's ear, who was also just a pretty evil man. Because of that, Haman wanted to have the Jews killed. Now, the way that the Medo-Persian Empire had their laws, they would have that once a law is set in stone, it's set. There's no retracting it. There's no amending it. And so he was able to go ahead and convince King Ahasuerus to go ahead and have the Jews killed, like literally all the Jews. So everywhere in his province, or in everywhere in his kingdom. So all the way from Ethiopia all the way to India, every Jew in every place that is to be found was able to be killed. Now, God used just divine intervention and circumstance to go ahead and have King Ahasuerus made aware of the fact that, okay, well, Esther, my queen, is Jew, and then also the fact that Mordecai had saved his life, in effect, to go ahead and turn the situation around to where Haman himself would be hanged on the gallows that he had set for Mordecai. And then after that, he allowed for Mordecai to be able to write a law that would be put in effect, which was distributed to literally every single province and every single town within his kingdom, that the Jews were going to be allowed to defend themselves on those days that they were going to be attacked, in particular one day that they were going to be attacked. So the Jews everywhere where they, on that day, were attacked, were able to go ahead and defend themselves and kill off everybody that attacked them. And they were spared by the hand of God, even though his name is not mentioned in his book, that another Holocaust. So instead of being wiped out, they were able to defend themselves. They were able to continue living. And so that's what he's writing here. This is a day of joy because they were able to defend themselves. They were able to continue living and not be exterminated. And as a result, in those 127 provinces, all the way from India to Ethiopia, we have, it says here, in every province and in every city, whithersoever the king's commandment and decree came, the Jews had joy and gladness, a feast and a good day. And it says, many of the people of the land. Now, what land is that? That's the land where any of the Jews were, all stretching all the way from India, going back to Ethiopia, became Jews. So these are Jewish proselytes, and it's because the fear of the Jews fell upon them. Interesting. There is Jewish history in India. This is the first of it that we read of it in Esther. But there are indications from their writings and history that there are interaction with Jewish people. Most of it is further ahead as far as that's documented strongly. And that is when we see that there's traders that are in southern India. And then there's also on the coastal areas. And then we also see that further ahead in 1400s to 1500s, when Spain was kicking out all the Jews. And then when you had individuals getting kicked out from North Africa, that they traveled over into India. And then there's even individuals that claim present day that they are from the tribe of Manasseh as well in Northeast India presently. There's no way to verify that necessarily. But it's interesting that of all random places of where they're spread out, that in India, you have pockets of individuals that became Jews, and that you have pockets in India, even present day, that are refuge for the Jews to be able to have where they're not persecuted. That's it. I'm sorry, does anybody have any questions?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, Charlie. Yeah, are there any questions?
I have a question.
Yes.
It's not super related to anything that you said, but I do have some of those also. But anyway, the timeline that you showed a few slides ago, did you
Yep.
make that in Excel, or did you find that online already?
No, I found it online.
You found that online? Because I'm super interested in, like, I've been, I try to make some timelines, and then I've been using different things, and then I found Excel to kind of help me. But I was just curious, like, what you exactly did for that, because it was pretty detailed. That was a nice, definitely a good timeline. So thanks for sharing.
No, not from.
What was that verse again? 8.
The last verse.
Oh,
It's 8:17. Esther 8:17, the last one.
Charlie, can I ask a question? I don't know if you got into this at all, but if you looked at all into the Indian writings, those ones that you were talking about, Veda, and I know Angela has definitely studied those as well. Did you see anything in there that correlated with the Bible? Or maybe you didn't go down that route at all, but I'm curious because I've heard that some of those Indian writings almost sound biblical. In other words, there could have been people in India that God was talking to and giving the same messages, but it's not biblical, it's not canon, of course. But did you run into any of that?
Yes, but I didn't study that out. I only was looking for mention of Jews. So my purpose was just basically see, okay, how far back were, so like remember when we did where the when we were talking about like Armana, and then there was a mention of the Habiru people. So that's basically what I was kind of looking to see if there was any kind of other ancient literature that had maybe a mention of either Habiru or some other similar name to what would be the Jews. So I didn't. I did. There are articles along that vein as far as that show that like some Vedic literature has similarity to scripture. But I didn't follow that rabbit trail.
Angela has a question.
Just wanted to make a comment, for Micah's question, and also like on your timeline, Charlie.
Yes.
Yeah, so the time of King Xerxes, was around 480 BC. And then you have like around 500 BC is the Vedanta period. So the whole entire Vedic culture shifted, in terms of writings, and you get like more of a modern kind of thing. And like you're talking about things like challenges to the old ways and the old traditions. So, I mean, it has nothing to do particularly with Jews or with the answer to the question, but except for the fact that there was a great change spiritually, and that could have had a lot to do with the fact that King Xerxes was maybe just allowing more things, or that there were more influences coming in at that time. So I don't know. I just thought I would mention that if anyone wants it as food for thought.
Yeah, that's down your alley, right?
Oh, can I
Thank you.
make a general comment?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh,
Yeah.
Micah told me that I had pronounced Armana incorrectly, so I noticed that Charlie did the same. So maybe ask Micah how to say it correctly, because he found the spelling error after I never even found it out of all those time I spent reading the articles. So you should give him an A super plus, Pastor.
Thank you.
What's the way to say it?
Amarna. It's not Armana, it's Amarna.
Amarna.
Amarna, yeah.
I'm linguistically challenged, so thank you. That mistake.
Well, I didn't notice that I spelled it wrong either, Pastor, and I was reading it.
No, I like to have company. That's what I'm saying.
Okay, I'm there with you. I'm team Pastor. There you go.
I have a question for Charlie.
Yes.
So I don't know if you, again, not really super related, but you know how like the Jews, they were kind of going after their enemies and such in chapter 9, it talks about, gives like a brief overview of what they were doing. And then like, like wicked Haman, who basically set this trap or whatever for Mordecai to fall in, and then he ends up being hanged on the gallows thereof. But Haman's sons, his 10 sons, they go after them. And I always thought that was interesting because you kind of wonder, the Bible doesn't really tell us if that was right or if that was wrong. Because the Bible does say, the children are to be punished to the third and fourth generation for the sins of the fathers. But it also says that the children shall not be put to death for the sins of the fathers. So I was kind of curious if you had thought about that at all.
Yeah, that's one of the things as far as there's a lot of things that are mentioned in the book. Like some people would argue that Esther was wrong for marrying, or even conceding to marry, Xerxes because, or Ahasuerus because he was, not a believer, or he's not a Jew. So, among other things, I just take it as like when you read in Chronicles or Kings, where individuals, you see just they do things. Part of the culture of the day was, okay, somebody's coming up, they're your enemy, you take them all out too. David even had that as far as like where he did that when individuals where he himself, on his lifetime was okay, I'll let you live. But and then when he was dying on his deathbed, he was giving Solomon instruction, all right, kill Joab, these other individuals that I let live in my lifetime, make sure you take him out, you take care of him, kind of thing. In part, probably I would imagine because they're going to give him problems, but also in part because they were directly, well, it's not just because of they pose a threat. They could go ahead and kill them down the road, or they could pose some other kind of rebellion. So I don't. I'm not sure how to. I mean, other than just from a political standpoint, as far as looking at it, like, okay, hey, these guys pose a threat, so we got to take them out because otherwise, we're gonna be dealing with this further down the road. But they did have the opportunity to be able to go ahead, I would imagine, and go ahead and repent. I would imagine if they would have repented, then they might have been given leeway. But I don't know that they did. But that's me reading into it. I don't actually know.
Yeah. No, that's
Okay,
interesting.
okay.
It's like you said, like the Bible is definitely not always prescriptive, right? It's like kind of sometimes it'll just tell a story of what happened.
Yeah.
Like David committing adultery. It's not telling us that we should go commit adultery, right?
Exactly.
But yeah, thanks for sharing that, Troy. That was great.
Interesting how India is in the Bible. Okay, thank you, Charlie, for that presentation on Bible geography. And so now what we want to do in these last few moments is we want to take our textbook and turn to page 70, where you'll see map 30. There's a book back there, Angela. There's a book up. Is it on the table? And you were going to use. No, go ahead. I have the map. I'm sorry. I thought maybe you had. Okay, so we want to go to map 30 and page 70. I want to ask Esther Hahn if you could read in just a moment on the first column on page 70, the second paragraph down where it says Kadesh Barnea stood at the junction. If you could read that in just a moment.
Sure.
Let me ask a few people to read some verses here. So if let's see here, Jacob, could you read Numbers chapter 13, verse 3?
Numbers chapter 13, verse 3.
Yep. And then, okay, and we're going to get Kerry to read Numbers 13, verse 21. And then, yeah, I'm going to, there, yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, okay. Oh, so it's going to get Timothy to read Numbers chapter 14, verse 25. And Jasmine, if you could read chapter 13, verse 23. And then Jessica, let's see here, 14, 25. Jessica, could you read chapter 14, verse 45? I have a lot of verses here.
I'm sorry, Pastor, what book?
Oh, Numbers. Yeah, we're in Numbers.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, all the verses. I'm sorry. Yeah, Numbers 14, 45. And then Angela, could I get you to read Numbers 20, verse 22? I don't know how we're going to get to all this, but we'll try. Then Micah 21, verse 1 and verse 4. can do that. And then we're gonna do Liz, can I get you to read Deuteronomy chapter 2, verse 1? Let me just stop there. Can you believe it? I have more verses, but that's enough. Okay, so what we want to actually see, and there's, think of all those Bible verses I just gave you. You know what this means? That there are so many references to geography in this journey of Israel out of Egypt and then through the wilderness. And it's just really mind-numbing. And so just these last couple of chapters, you could spend a long time trying to digest it all. So we want to just hopefully get some of it where we can get just a taste of it. So as Israel now has been wandered in the wilderness, and they've gone to Mount Sinai, they've become an official nation there. God's given them the law on Mount Sinai. We looked at that last week. And then they continue their journeys from there, and they come here, it says, to the wilderness of Paran. And Jacob, can you please read Numbers chapter 13, verse 3, please? And when I call you to read, if you could try to read as quickly as possible, go for it.
Numbers chapter 13, verse 3. And Moses, by the commandment of the Lord, sent them from the wilderness of Paran, all those men who were heads of the children of Israel.
Okay, so the wilderness of Paran is here. I think you could see it here, Zin, and actually Paran is below Zin, the wilderness of Zin. It's not actually on that map, but it's in this region here. You see where the wilderness of Zin here, wilderness of Paran, and Kadesh is kind of like right in the middle between. And if you could see that you could see that more clearly on map 30. I don't have a picture of that, but on map 30, you see the wilderness of Paran here, and then above it, the wilderness of Zin, and find Kadesh, where basically the red line begins on map 30. I'm sorry, I don't have that map there. So they're in the wilderness of Paran, and they're basically at Kadesh Barnea, and this is where the 12 spies are sent out. Now, Kadesh Barnea is an important city, so I've asked Esther if you could please read column 1 in our textbook, page 70, the first complete paragraph there on column 1 that begins with Kadesh Barnea. If you could read that, please, Esther.
Okay, Kadesh Barnea stood at the junction of two important roads. One linked Egypt to Edom, and the other extended from the Gulf of Aqaba northward through the Negev in the hill country of Canaan. The following is an outline of the major events centered upon Kadesh Barnea.
Okay, so what he's saying there, from Egypt to Edom, that would go pretty much more east, just direct east. And you can kind of see that gray line there where it goes out of Kadesh Barnea and then it goes east. But then where it says the other extended from the Gulf of Aqaba, remember that's Ezion Geber, that's south. That's the Red Sea at Ezion Geber. That's the city right at the tip of that Gulf of Aqaba and going north. And so we're going to see that. So this was a key city between with these two major routes. So that's an important little paragraph there. Okay, so we have to understand that as we go through this. Okay, so let's look at our notes here, and the sojourn at Kadesh. So this became the gathering place for the tribes during their 38-year stay in the wilderness because of their unbelief. So it was kind of like their home base and remember, they wandered as the glory of God led them. As the glory cloud lifted, they had to go. But this seemed to be like the gathering place still at the same time, where they would seem to end up probably in there. And I think in Numbers, in one of the later chapters, it has all the different places that they went. Okay, so two important roads passed through Kadesh Barnea. We just talked about that. One linked Egypt with Edom. The other extended from the Gulf of Aqaba up to the hill country of Canaan. So Moses sent out the 12 spies from Kadesh Barnea. So I've asked Kerry if you could please read Numbers chapter 13, verse 21.
Numbers chapter 13, verse 21 reads, So they went up and searched the land from the wilderness of Zin unto Rehob, as men come to Hamath.
Okay, so it says and here it says from the wilderness of Zin. Now remember, verse 3 said the wilderness of Paran. So you have these two wildernesses with Kadesh is kind of in the borders, both of them. So that's why I believe we see that. But it says unto Rehob as men come to Hamath. And that is very interesting. That kind of gives probably the northern point of their journey. So Hamath is here. And in our map, it's called Lebo Hamath. But I believe that would be the Hamath, and that's why the map has, you see where the red line enters or completes up here. That's Lebo Hamath. So they went from here in their journey all the way up there. And then look at this verse next. Look at chapter 13. Look at verse 23. And I asked Jasmine if you could read that, and then Timothy, you'll be reading after Jasmine. Look at Numbers 13:23, please.
Then they came to the valley of Eshcol, and from there cut down a branch with a single cluster of grapes, and they carried it on a pole between two men, with some of the pomegranates and the figs.
Okay, thank you, Jasmine. So you see, here's the valley of Eshcol. So he kind of goes back. Basically, in that verse we read, it gave the length of the journey, and now they're saying what significantly happened on the journey in the valley of Eshcol, where they found these grapes in the valley of Eshcol. So that's also referenced there. And look at verse 26 also. Could you read? I didn't ask anybody to read that, did I? No. Could you read that as well, Jasmine? Numbers 13, verse 26.
They proceeded to come to Moses and Aaron and to all the congregation of the sons of Israel in the wilderness of Paran at Kadesh. And they brought back word to them and to all the congregation and showed them the fruit of the land.
Okay, so it's almost as if Paran and the wilderness of Zin and the wilderness of Paran are both being used here in verse 3, verse 21, and now verse 26. He again references it as the wilderness of Paran. Okay, so but to Kadesh Barnea. So that's the key thing, that they're functioning and working out of Kadesh Barnea. So then, of course, they bring back the bad report, and then Moses says that they're going to wander in the wilderness for 40 years. So then what happens? In Numbers chapter 14, look at verse number 25. And when they're given the sentence of 40 years of wandering in the wilderness, then God tells them, there's some pretty big words here, Timothy, but you can do it. Look at Numbers chapter 14, verse 25.
Since the Amalekites and the Canaanites are living in the valleys, turn back tomorrow and set out toward the downwards along the route of the Red Sea.
Okay. So he's telling us that was great, Timothy. Perfect. Great reading. So the Amalekites and Canaanites were living, and God says, now, tomorrow I want you to go into the wilderness by the way of the Red Sea, which is, if you go to the map 32, and I have this map here, map 32, you see where the red line going down to Ezion Geber, which is at the very tip of the Gulf of Aqaba. You see where it says that's the way of the Red Sea. It says the way of, so God says, I want you to go down the way of the Red Sea. But what does Israel say? Oh, wait a minute, we made a mistake. when God told them they were going to wander in the wilderness, they're like, we don't want to do that. We'll go fight them. We'll go fight them. And God says, no, don't be presumptuous. And Moses said, don't go. The Lord won't be with you. But guess what? So they didn't fight when God said fight, and now they're not supposed to fight, and they're going to go fight. So they go and they measure up against the Amalekites and the Canaanites. And if you look at chapter 14 and verse number 45, you know what? Let me get Jessica, I asked you to read that. Let me get Timothy to read that one also, since he's already got the Canaanites and the Amalekites down. So Timothy, could you read verse 45 as well of Numbers chapter 14?
45. Okay. Then the Amalekites and the Canaanites who lived in that hill country came down and attacked them and beat them down all the way to Hormah.
Okay, to Hormah. You could say some of these words however you want, because that's what I do. Okay, thank you, Timothy. Good job. And so this is, okay, so check this out. They're here in Kadesh Barnea. God said, I want you to go down by the way of the Red Sea, which is down here to Ezyon Geber. But they say, no, we want to go fight now. So they go against the Amalekites and the Canaanites, which were in this region, and they get driven, it says, up to Hormah. You see where Hormah is up here? This is Hormah. Map number 32. Map 32. Okay, so they were supposed to go down the way of the Red Sea, right? But they fought, here's the Amalekites here. The Amalekites live here. They've always, you talk about people destined for destruction, it's the Amalekites. And the Canaanites were kind of living in the Negev, this Negev area as well. So there were Canaanites kind of spread out through in this area. So the Israelites fight them, and then they get driven all the way up to Hormah, north. So notice where they're supposed to be and where they actually were. they were not where they're supposed to be. Okay, so that's kind of what happens there. So all of that geography is given, which I thought is pretty amazing. Now, moving on from there, Numbers chapter 20, look at Numbers chapter 20, verse 22. As we come into Numbers chapter 20, were you going to read that one, Angela? Yeah, okay. Angela has Numbers chapter 20, and why don't you read verse 22 and 23?
And the children of Israel, even the whole congregation, journeyed from Kadesh and came unto Mount Hor. And the Lord spake unto Moses and Aaron in Mount Hor by the coast of the land of Edom, saying.
Okay, yeah, and then Aaron dies there. So we're not exactly sure where Mount Hor is, but again, on map 32, Mount Hor is just north of Kadesh Barnea. It says it right here, but it has a question mark beside it. They're not absolutely sure where that is. Okay, and actually I skipped out a whole section here where Israel, well, they had actually written to Edom, and they said, can we pass through Edom? Because remember, they're not down here probably yet, but they wanted to go this way, but Edom said no. Edom did not let them do that. So Aaron dies there, Mount Hor. That's the point there. And then Micah, if you could read now their journeys from there in chapter 21, verses 1 and also verse 3. We're looking at Numbers 21, verses 1 and 3.
When King Arad, the Canaanite, which dwelt in the south, heard tell that Israel came by the way of the spies, then he fought against Israel and took some of them prisoners. Verse 4. And they journeyed from Mount Hor by the way of the Red Sea to compass the land of Edom, and the soul of the people was much discouraged because of the way.
Okay. So they were in Mount Hor, and again, they're not exactly sure where that was, but this king of the Canaanites, which dwelt, notice where it says he dwelt in the south. Remember, and what's the south mean? The Negev. Okay, so we see that on our map all the time. We always see the Negev, and I'm circling it. So Aaron dies. They're somewhere in that region, and then they journeyed from Mount Hor by the way of the Red Sea to compass. It says to go around Edom, because Edom wouldn't give them passage. So now here's where it gets a little dicey, and the book even talks about this, and they're not exactly sure the journey. That's why there's multiple lines here. They could have gone east to go around Edom this way, but I actually believe they went by the way of the Red Sea down, and they actually went where God had told them to go before. So they ended up doing what God said to do, which was go down by the way of the Red Sea to Ezion Geber and go around Edom that way. That's what I think happened. So, and then I asked, and that's in verse 4 that Micah just read, the way of the Red Sea. And also, if you look at Deuteronomy, keep your finger in Numbers. But Liz, could you read Deuteronomy chapter 2, verse 1, please?
Pastor. Then we turned and took our journey into the wilderness by the way of the Red Sea, as the Lord spake unto me, and we compassed Mount Seir many days.
Okay, so that's just a cross reference, that one, where because it says in the verse before that, we were abiding in Kadesh many days, and then we took our journey by the way of the Red Sea to go around Mount Seir, which is Edom. Remember, Edom are the descendants of Esau, the brother of Jacob, and they wouldn't even, the brothers wouldn't let him pass through. Okay, so they're going around, basically. Okay, so we're just going to finish this up. Look at Numbers 21. And Jessica, let me get you to read, if I could ask you to read Numbers 21, verses 12 and 13 of Numbers chapter 21. Jessica?
Okay, verse 12. From thence they removed and pitched in the valley of Zarad. And you said verse 13, correct?
Hold on here. Let me catch up here. Okay. So now they're going around, and then it says they journeyed and they removed and pitched in the valley of Zared. Yeah, okay. And then if you could read the next verse.
From thence they removed and pitched on the other side of Arnon, which is in the wilderness that cometh out of the coasts of the Amorites. For Aran is the border of Moab, between the Moab and the Amorites.
Okay, so notice all this geography. You're going to have to really take a while to look at the different points on the map to kind of follow along. But I believe it's pretty much along this red line here, and they're heading up to a battle against Sihon, the king of the Amorites. So they're going around the Edomites. And I thought the valley of Zared, does anybody see where that is offhand? Oh, Zared River. You see where it says Moab on map 32? You see where it says Moab on map 32? And right under Moab, it says Zared River. So it would be in that region, and that river extends down. So they compassed around there. That must be the valley of Zared by that river. And then it mentions Arnon, you see, and then if you keep going up from there above Moab, now look above Moab, and do you see the Arnon River? It's between Mishur, right here. I'm circling it. I could be circling. That's the Arnon River here, and here's the Zared River. So that these two places are referenced, the valley of that river and this area, Arnon. So they're heading north, in other words. They're going up this way. And this is the journey up. Now they've bypassed Edom, and now they're coming up to the country of Moab. and that's referenced in verse 20. If you look at verse 20, can I get Timothy, are you still there? Did I put you to sleep yet? No? Okay. Timothy, could you read Numbers chapter 21 and verse 20? These are some hard verses. They have some very strange words, but just do your best, Timothy. We don't know how to say these words either, so don't worry. Okay?
And from Baphnath to the valley that is in the land of Moab, at the top of Pisgah, which overlooks the wasteland.
Okay, so the reason I read that, because this is where we're going to end up tonight, where it says the country of Moab to the top of Pisgah. This is ultimately where Moses is eventually going to die. And it's in this region right here. Again, it's on, you see where it says Plains of Moab right here. I'm circling it. And right by the Plains of Moab, it does say Mount Nebo. And in parentheses, you need glasses if you don't see well, but it says Pisgah, right in this area right here. So this is where they're at. Okay, so basically what happens, let me just read these last few verses, and then we'll try to get you out of here, but I do want to get to a point here. It says, they came, it says in verse 21 of Numbers chapter 21, verse 21, they came to Sihon, king of the Amorites. So now they're up here where the Amorites are. Do you see where it says here, Sihon? This is where the battle's going to take place. And now they try to pass through the Amorites. The Amorites said, no, you can't pass through here either. So first the Edomites wouldn't let them pass. Now the Amorites won't let them pass. Now look what it says. And verse 24, it says, Israel smote him with the edge of the sword, possessed his land from Arnon unto Jabbok. Now there it is. Watch that. Watch that geography. And this is amazing because the Bible's so accurate. Every time the Bible mentions a place, it's actually putting itself out there. People could criticize, say, oh, that's wrong, you know. But here it says from the Arnon to the Jabbok. So watch this. Do you see where it says the Arnon River right here? It's under Mishor. That says the Arnon. And then above here, you go up right below Gilead, it says the Jabbok. So Arnon is here, and the Jabbok is here. And so this was Sihon's region of power. And Israel defeated and took all these cities. They took the cities from Arnon to Jabbok. And Heshbon was a key city of King Sihon there. Heshbon, in there somewhere. Okay, but from Arnon to Jabbok. So just think of that. Israel just defeated a major king who controlled this region of land. Okay, so they've got that area now for themselves, and that's going to become a new resting place for them. And they're going to cross the Jordan River not far from there. And that's where Moses is going to die also. Okay, so I just wanted to get up to that point. And now it does say that they came and that there was another battle where they fought the king of Bashan. Up here, that's at the end of chapter 21. But let's just put that to the side. The last verse we're going to read, and let me get Liz. Could I get you to read the last verse, Numbers chapter 22, verse 1, please?
Pastor, Numbers 22, and you said verse 1?
Yeah.
And the children of Israel set forward and pitched in the plains of Moab on this side Jordan by Jericho.
Okay, so again, that's in this. So they went up here and fought, but then they came back down here because they have this territory from the Jabbok to the Arnon rivers, and the plains of Moab is kind of right in between there, and that's where they're going to kind of stage their entrance into the land of Canaan. Okay, so, and then if you got the last blanks, it just tells you about the neighbors of Israel, their Transjordan neighbors. There's an interesting article on page 75. I know it's hard to read with the brown parchment paper. You got to read through the parchment paper there. It's kind of annoying, But again, it's important to know that Edom and the Moabites, the Moabites and the Midianites, which were actually below them, they were the Transjordan neighbors of Israel. Okay, so we're done with chapter 7. I don't think we're going to finish chapter 8. That's a long chapter, but we'll start that next week. And the last one more class for this semester. Okay, any questions? Yes, comment, Micah. Micah's going to make an interesting comment.
I don't know about that. When I was on my way to Petra in Jordan, like if you follow this map and you look at the red line furthest to the right, starting at the Red Sea there at the bottom and then going up, that's sort of like the route you would take to go to Petra. Partway through, they pointed out from afar, there's a really tall mountaintop where they say Aaron is buried, and they call that Mount Hor.
Okay.
So that's another possible.
Yeah.
But they have like a temple there, not a temple, sorry, a memorial there that dates back to like the 1300s. So it's been there for a long time, and it's just on the very, very top. So no matter,
That would be where?
kind of like halfway up between the
Right.
Red Sea and the Dead Sea,
Right, in this
on
region.
that red line.
Right,
Yeah.
yeah. I think
So-
that would actually make more sense.
So I mean, nowhere, you don't know where Aaron died, but even if they carried his body up for a while and then found like a mountain in the area of Petra where they buried him on top, it's very hard to get to, but you can see it from afar, and it's cool.
Okay, thank you, Micah. Okay, so that's that. You need to know these Transjordan neighbors of Israel, Edom, Moab, and the Midianites. Okay, good night, everyone. God bless.